Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So this definitely is not my day because this is like the fourth time I'm starting to record this video, but either way we are here to talk about Spider-Woman, a champion that I am personally quite hyped about and interested in acquiring because well, she's cool. And besides that, I do think she will represent a solid addition to the contest, providing she, integrates herself well and her damage holds up, and then at the end of the video we're going to go over her matchups. But I like the fact that she's a science champion that does have access to power things, and she has buffs, which is fairly unique for science champion. She has the neutralize immunity, which is becoming also quite important at times. And then the fact that she has some defensive value as well. So I do think she could potentially be a dual purpose type of character where you do need to learn how to fight against her, because there will be some tricks and hidden traps in these fights, and she will be moderately good defender, and that's the design intention according to Kabam as well. I don't think she isn't meant to be like the next Photon, Serpent, or Bullseye, but I do think that Science class in general at the moment is lacking in defenders. We have Photon in Science class, but then outside of that, realistically, we have these meta merchant defenders, champions that do appear in specific metas under specific conditions when they do interact well with the nodes, like Thing, like Jessica Jones. But in general, there are hardly any, mainstay science champions for defense in the game at the moment. And I hope she can change that. I hope she can be a dual threat type of champion, similar to Thanos, obviously not necessarily as powerful, but the fact of the matter is when you pick up a Thanos, you can throw it in defense, you can use it in attack, and she could also be used for alliance or defense, which is always a plus for a character if the champion is good offensively and also defensively, making again a better chance for her to be a meta impactful champion. But besides all the meta stuff, besides all the battleground stuff, I do think she also looks very fun to play. I love the fact that we're getting another science champion that has access to power things and therefore interacts with, let's say, Ant-Man Relic, which lets you access Taunt, which is, super useful in today's day and age with the AI being the way it is. And yeah, I think she's fairly unique and cool. So she also introduces a few new mechanics, like Retribution, which is effectively the opposite of Daunted, where you increase the amount of damage you do to your opponents during their special attacks. I think that would actually be a cool ability to see on the Relic, such as Ant-Man as well, where you kind of like fuel up power thing characters further. But that's fine, cool new mechanic added to the game. And there was one more important thing about Spider-Woman that I do believe she represents sort of an evolution in Kabam's trend to mess with the champion masteries. Now, do not get me wrong, I prefer they would not mess with our dexterity and parry masteries like at all, or willpowers and stuff, but they do. However, unlike recently, where you just enter the fight and bang, your willpower is disabled against like Dust and Photon and stuff, where you enter the fight and bang, your dexterity gets disabled, so on and so forth. Here, you actually have a fighting chance, where she does have a debuff that disables your dexterity, but you can get rid of it, or you can just time it correctly for it to never be applied, or you can stall the fight and, just wait out its duration. So you at least have a fighting chance with a generic champion and /skill/AI luck to work your way around it, rather than that being the status quo. You can't dex, and I like that a lot. So another thing to note immediately is that her awakened ability does seem to be quite significant. It will increase your damage output by effectively enabling you to keep your furies after you activate your level 1, because that is how you inflict your power things. You sacrifice your small fury buffs and exchange them for power things, but with awakened ability you can effectively get a passive version of that fury. Also, you have quicker ramp up. When intercepting, you gain a fury buff immediately. On her base hit, she does get it effectively every 5 hits. And then while dodging back, you get a failsafe dexing the special attacks too, which is quite nice. So I do think that unlike with Lumitrix, where the awakened ability seemed fairly weak, here it does seem to be quite important. So let's go over her rotation. So every 5 hits, you gain a fury buff. And if you intercept, you gain immediately another one. And if you crit when you intercepted or punish a special attack, then you can gain your fury buffs quicker. The rotation is almost identical to Lumitrix, which we covered in the previous champion ability breakdown video, which is effectively you build up to nearly 3 bars of power, unlike Lumitrix full 3 bars. And then you just go your level 2 and spam little ones, and that is it. So she does not seem like she'll be like a massive nuke. There's still like the set rotation where you realistically will need 3 to 4 bars of power to finish up a fight in generic circumstances, but as long as her utility holds up and then her reach of that rotation is good enough, that should be able to work, especially if she does have some defensive value as well. She does have access to 6 debilitates, which should ensure that she's a fairly solid counter to Enchantress. Unfortunately, no answer to that miss mechanic, but still, it looked quite good. I quite liked what I saw from her gameplay so far that has been made available to us. So let's break down her abilities fully and completely, and also her intended design purposes. So 3 in survivability, so she's not particularly chunky. She does have, obviously access to a ton of debuffs, which interact with Inequity Mastery, which is good. That makes her a bit chunkier. Then she does have her evade mechanic as well when striking opponents that are unstoppable or forcing you to miss. So you have a few fail safes here and there, as well as sig ability. But in general, she's not meant to be the chunkiest of the champions. Damage 4, and again, this can mean really anything. It's meant to signify that she does have good damage, but again, Destroyer is damage 4, Lumitrix is damage 4, which seems to be like a crit machine, and here it's really hard to tell. Honestly, we'll see. Ease of use 2.5. I suppose it kind of makes sense, even though I do not think it's particularly difficult to use her. Yeah, you're kind of encouraged to intercept, but it's not a must. It improves your damage output slightly. And other than that, it's just level 2, level 1 type thing. You do not need to charge your heavy attacks, go up, down, down. There are no silly mini games where you need to hit the dots on the Dazzler Shines or have a perfect release arrows or God knows what. So I do like the fact that there are none of these stupid mini games. And my cat is stupid. Oh. The cat is trying to steal my mouse. He's gonna get it in the neck. And now he's moving my speakers. Okay, I'm holding them in place. Okay, so utility 3.5. That kind of makes sense. She does have some things going for her, but she doesn't have like many of the science staples in her kit as well. And defender strength 3.5. So that means that she should at the very least be some threat on defense. So Spider-Woman, once again, Fury buffs, then use her special 1 to turn those Fury buffs into Power Stings. She gains Fury buffs by striking opponent and activating her special 2. And she can keep these buffs by refreshing them by dodging special attacks and with Dexterity Mastery. Additionally, special 2 inflicts a Retribution passive, effectively doubling the potency of your Power Stings. So, Science, Power Sting, Shock, Fury. Shock is really non-existent there, to be honest. Thank God, because, as we all know by now, Shock is by far the worst dot, but it doesn't really matter here. Fury, Evade, Debilitate, Fumble, and Wither. Wither is also, it's similar to Photon's Petrify, really. So, let's go. Strengths and weaknesses, Safety, Net against Unstoppable and Miss, where if you strike unstoppable opponent or you miss, you immediately get like an evade buff for 2 seconds that allows you to evade everything. Anti-evade is more present as an attacker. You do get your ensnare, so she can counter evade. This is a significant piece of her utility as well. Severe Power Sting cannot be purified. That's kind of cool. Weaknesses, Tranquilize, debuff duration reduction, anti-evade mechanics, and immune or resistance to Power Sting. Again, I don't think that anti-evade is that big of a weakness, but we'll see. Right, so abilities, always. Spider-Woman's immune to poison, neutralize, and power steal. Very nice to see a neutralize immune champion that primarily affects a Rinter matchup or some specific nodes, but still good. Poison immunity is always nice to have, why not? All personal effects except stun and power gain are paused during any special attack. Very nice. Fury buffs, so these are very weak Fury buffs though. Personal Fury buffs increase attack rating by 300 for 15 seconds. This buff duration cannot be reduced and refreshes on an evade or when dodging a special attack with the Dexterity Mastery. Max stacks 20. At 20 stacks, you do more than double your max damage output, but unless you have her awakened, in most cases, you will not get those 20 stacks because you're meant to use these Fury buffs as kind of your currency to inflict power stings. For every 5 line of basic attacks, gain a Fury buff when starting a combo against a non-stunned opponent. That effectively means when you intercept or punish special attack, critical hits count as 2 hits. When struck, 20% chance to gain a Fury buff, so that's on defense. And that is going to be quite important because whenever she gains a buff, one second. I need... Alright, and back we are. I had to let the cat out of the bag. No, but the room. Okay, either way. We're going to break this down a bit later on, but it is significant that that's how she also gains Furies, mainly for her defensive abilities. So debuffs. When Spider-Woman gains a buff, inflict 8.33% debilitate debuff for 20 seconds, max stack 6. Against Mystic Champions, this debuff becomes a severe debuff. So, whenever you dex, every 5-hit combo, if she's awakened every intercept, you gain your Fury buff, and you automatically inflict a debuff on the opponent, which means that you will quite easily get these debilitates up and active, and that immediately will start fueling the rest of your abilities too, make your debuff stick longer in itself, but again, interact with Inequity, interact with Despair, and fuel your evade, and so on and so forth. So when a buff on Spider-Woman expires naturally or is nullified, inflict a non-stacking 50% Wither debuff for 1 second. When this Wither ends, Spider-Woman gains a power gain passive, granting her 100% of the power denied, while it was active over, I believe it's 3 seconds or something like that. This is kind of made to minimize the impact of Mystic Dispersion. It halves the Mystic Dispersion and then gives you the power that you stole from your opponent. So this is largely meant in the Mystic matchups. Obviously, this can also work against, Hyperions and a bunch of other champions. But the point is that most often you will trigger this Wither passive directly after dexing an attack, gaining that precision, and then striking the opponent. And thus, again, minimizing Mystic Dispersion. Every 15 seconds, inflict an Ensnare debuff and 100% severe Fumble debuff for 7 seconds. The Fumble debuff, again, is the one that disables Dexterity Mastery, and Snare is the one that prevents opponent from evading, period. This timer pauses during Spider-Woman's special attacks, and as defender, these debuffs cannot be inflicted during the opponent's special attack. So, this timer pauses during the Spider-Woman's special attacks, and again, keep in mind that all personal effects except stun and power gain are paused during any special, so you will likely be able to maintain this ensnare for more significant amount of time. As defender, when the opponent activates special attack, Fumble is removed. Additionally, Spider-Woman is more likely to use special attack 1 whilst Fumble is active. So this is going to be, again, important thing. So you either need to be able to get rid of this when you push Spider-Woman past the bar of power by activating a special attack, or you need to be able to, push her to level 2 or tranquilize, because if she activates her level 1, it's going to be a bad time if you can't dex. So, Venom Blast. Personal Shock are instants and deal burst of 300 energy damage. That's, very minimal. It's not much. When a buff on Spider-Woman is nullified, inflict 2 instant shocks. When Spider-Woman inflicts a shock or has one prevented by an immunity, inflict 1422 severe power sting debuff for 10 seconds. As defender, these last for 7 seconds. And here's the crucial thing. Number 1, you can use these up with your Fury buffs and passives. And number 2, you do have your Retribution, which effectively will double their potency if you have thrown level 2 before that. And these power stings also deal an additional burst of direct damage when they trigger, scaling up with how much power and the number of bars the opponent had. As defender, this only scales the base attack, but effectively there's a way to juice these power things up more. Evade. For each non-damaging debuff on both champions, Spider-Woman has a 2% chance to evade incoming attacks up to max of 24%. This evade does not trigger while blocking. And it's one of the kind of key abilities here for her as a defender. Because number one, well, we just discussed the power things through block thing, which is gonna make you kind of strategize for that. But number two, you kind of want and or need an evade counter, because on average every combo is gonna at the very least give her fury buff, which means you will get one debilitate debuff on yourself at the very least, which means after the very first combo, she's statistically going to have at the very least 2% chance to evade something. Then she's going to have more and more and more chance to evade something. And then after 15 seconds, you get the ensnare and fumble debuffs on you. And ultimately, you do need to be careful fighting her, because this evade is going to be just about ever present. And then you do have the, again, additional difficulty of having to work around those power things through block. So when an attack strikes an unstoppable opponent or misses, gain 100% evade buff for 2 seconds, and evade from this buff can trigger while blocking. And when it triggers, this effect goes on cooldown for 10 seconds or until a buff on Spider-Woman is nullified or she's immune to an effect. So that's kind of your safety net against unstoppables and misses. Right, now let's break down the special attacks a bit more. Level 1's fairly simple. Each hit inflicts an instant shock and consumes a buff on Spider-Woman to inflict a second shock. These can be inflicted through block. So it says any buff, which means she could potentially have some cheesy interactions with some nodes and incursions and stuff like that, or just some general quest nodes. But the entire point is you want to build up your furies, spam your level 1s, inflicting as many power things as you can, as many fury buffs you basically have. But this again means that you have to have those fury buffs for this special attack to be worthwhile. Special attack 2, Venom Blast, and activation gain 5 fury buffs and refresh all buffs on Spider-Woman. Final hit inflict the 100% retribution passive, again doubling your power sting damage for 20 seconds. When an attack strikes an unstoppable opponent or misses, this effect refreshes. Very nice. Special attack 3 is again an alternate way of delivering damage. It's not as good as your standard level 2, level 1 loop. You inflict 15 instant shocks, which means, the 15 power stings. Inflict the stun passive for 4 seconds, so you can build up opponent to a fairly significant amount of power, and gain a non-stacking 33% energize buff, so it's easier for you to spam your level 1s or level 2s. It's fine, but in general, it isn't a part of her, optimal rotations. Signature ability we kind of discussed already, but the point is, you do want to have her awakened. And that's it. That's the most important thing here. So, again, the rotation is fairly straightforward. You want to be spamming your level 2 and then level 1. You want to activate your level 2 and then spam your level 1s. So let's take a look at the matchups. I think she matches obviously very well against just about everybody in the Mystic class, because just about nothing here is immune to her power stings, and there's nothing that really would slow her down. Against Man-Thing, she does have the poison immunity. Obviously against Kindred, in between you stealing his power and dealing damage via power stings, I think she would be a very good counter to Kindred. Debilitates will make her at the very least an adequate or solid counter to Enchantress, which is, current meta Mystic Defender. Wish she could bypass Miss somehow, but still. Ebony Maw might be a bit annoying, but again, he's not necessarily as popular. But yeah, I don't think she's that great against Ebony Maw compared to the other Science Champions, because she is not immune to Nullify. She doesn't use her heavy attacks in her rotation, so that will slow her. Yeah, that's fair enough. But against Rintra, neutralize immunity is going to help you tremendously in your aggression. She does well against Sasquatch, as we have seen in the showcases. She should be able to cover just about everybody here. So that's good. Science champion that does the job. But again, against still skill champion, we did see some gameplay against Bullseye. Maybe that was a hint, but in general, I do not think it would go as well. But, you know, your ensnare could help at the very least to deal with their Wade. And then the severe debuffs not being purified could be quite nice as well. That would be an interesting matchup to try out. But then obviously, I don't think she would necessarily have that many great matchups here. But the severe thing could be helpful to a degree. Tech class, I think she matches fine against the most important defenders. I don't think she's going to do well against Zola though. Unless she can have... Nah, she shouldn't be too great against Zola. Maybe. And that is one of the good things about her damage delivery method, because there's hardly anything that really is, you know, immune to power stings or significantly reduces it. We do have Serpent, and I do believe Bullseye at High Seek does it too, but very, very few champions that do that. So who else we have as a significant defender in tech class? Red Skull. I think he should be just about fine, because you can easily push Red Skull to level 2 and then strike him in the Unstoppable, triggering your evade, and then Unstoppable goes away. Additionally, the fact that he has massive armor and crit rating doesn't particularly hurt you, so I think you should be able to do that relatively fine. Aside from Red Skull, we do have Zola again. I don't think she's going to be the best there, but yeah, I think she could be okay against some of the tech matchups for sure. Then moving on against mutants. Ha! There's an error. Which I think you'd be fine against Onslaught as well. Just like your level 2, level 1s. Yeah, that shouldn't be too much of an issue, I think. Jean Grey could be annoying. Domino obviously would be a no-no. But I think she would match quite well against a fair amount of champions. I do want to know how much her power sting damage gets affected by Inequity Mastery, because that will determine how well she can deal with Photon, I suppose. But again, there's nothing too crazy here. Obviously, she counters that. Obviously, she's not going to be great against Serpent. I highly doubt it anyways. And Deathless Thanos. Again, I think she might be a bit too slow. Well, maybe. At the very least, you can be a bit more aggressive than normal, thanks to that evade. We'll see. Could be decent there. But at the very least, that already is wider matchup market for her than many champions released recently. So I definitely very much look forward to using her and seeing exactly how effective she is in these matchups. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next